Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. Glad you're tuning into this episode. I'm excited. I heard Hunt Priest talk about Christian psychedelics at the Wild Goose Festival in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I think in 2022. Mm-hmm. I think that was my first. I actually think that was the first Wild Goose I'd ever gone to, and Brian McLaren was the one that encouraged me to go. And I had a big meltdown and all this, and had been out of ministry for a while, and Brian was kind of an encouragement to me, and he said, you should try Wild Goose. Brian was the only person I knew at Wild Goose when I went the first time. Now if I went, I would know bunches of people because I've been building new networks. But yeah, so I heard you talk about Christian psychedelics in a tent in the heat, in the humidity of North Carolina.
It's not been that hot since. I've been the last 4 years. It's not been that hot since. But
at that moment, I thought, oh man, I'd love to interview him on my podcast, right? So now here we are, October 2025, and we finally connected. So thank you, Hunt, for.
You're welcome. Thank you for your persistence.
Yeah, so good. So we're going to talk about Christian psychedelics, or just psychedelics in general today. And, it's interesting. I think the first time I even heard anybody talk about this in a serious sort of way, was a podcast that Tim Ferriss did. Mm-hmm. And I can't even remember who he was interviewing at the time. And he was mainly talking about ayahuasca, but I was so intrigued because as a teenager, I started smoking weed at 14 and did some acid trips, and then got saved at 16 in a Southern Baptist youth camp, and then felt called to be a pastor. And so I stopped doing all of that stuff, right? But I always had a curiosity in it. Then I became a vineyard pastor. I started a vineyard church in Kansas City in 1990, pastored that almost 30 years. And it's kind of a charismatic type movement, right?
Yeah.
But did you see Jesus Revolution?
No, but I know it, and I know the history. I do know the history.
So one of the most influential guys in the Jesus movement of the 70s and early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, was a guy named Lonnie Frisbee.
Sure, yeah.
Lonnie kind of had the long hair, looked like a white Jesus dude, had a acid trip in a canyon and encountered Jesus, and that was his conversion experience, and then was like this super influential. Now, the Jesus Revolution movie didn't actually even talk about that. He was also a closeted gay alcoholic. So I think, and he had an enormous gifting. Like I have close friends that were very close friends with Lonnie. Had extraordinary spiritual giftings, right? With the mysterious world of the spirit and all that. And I don't think we should ever eliminate his story.
Oh my God, I know.
Right?
See that in that culture, there's several things about that would be problematic. And it's like we just if communities are uncomfortable with something, it's like they just wipe it away, just like Bill Wilson. I mean, it immediately reminds me of Bill Wilson and AA and his own use of LSD and belladonna and psychedelics.
Yeah.
So, and it just doesn't fit AA orthodoxy, so they've scrubbed it out. Just
Yeah.
like Lonnie Frisbee doesn't quite fit vineyard orthodoxy.
Right.
Although I know of a congregation, a vineyard congregation, that does quietly work with psychedelics and does a lot of other sort of non-ordinary states like breathwork sessions.
You need to let me know offline who that is. I'll get a hold. I probably know him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is fascinating. I'm in the recovery world. I've been in recovery for 6 years now, and I've heard. I don't know as much about the Bill Wilson story as I do about the Lonnie Frisbee story.
Right.
But I do know. I've heard that same thing about Bill Wilson too.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's not hard to find it. It's just not high up the list of things they talk about.
Right.
But I would say his experience of his higher power was that way through that.
Interesting.
And, I think what's happened with psychedelics is it's gotten mashed in with, psychedelics are not addictive. They're just not.
Right.
And it's gotten mashed in together with everything and we could talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
If you want to, but how the war on drugs just conflated everything.
Yeah. Well, let's get a little bit of your background story. Like, where did you grow up, your faith, family origins? Give us just a little quick window into Hunt Priest.
Okay.
And how you became a pastor, and then we'll move into how you got in this psychedelic experiment at Johns Hopkins in 2016. So kind of give our audience just a little window into who you are. And
I'm 61. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky near Lexington, Mount Sterling, Kentucky, which is east of Lexington, about 30 minutes. And my parents and grandparents and all the way back, that's where we're from. And right around there, those 3 counties. And grew up in the church. I grew up with one foot in the Christian church. I know you're a disciples minister, and grew up with one foot in the disciples and one foot in the Episcopal Church. Grandmother and a grandfather were at the Episcopal Church. Those were both very formative. Both those traditions were very formative to my own spiritual life, and a very open-hearted, open-minded Christian upbringing. My mother was a choir director, so we were at church a lot, and I didn't have a lot of what people call religious trauma. I just didn't have it. My parents, we were religious, but not, I always say not overly, but we were very active in our church community and in our community that we lived in. And I went off to college, and then was kind of still going to church occasionally, which is not what a lot of people do in college, but I would go. My college roommate, he was a Presbyterian, and we would sometimes, not every Sunday, we would get up sometimes if we felt okay and go. And then went to work, moved to Atlanta after college and worked for Delta Airlines had 2 different stints there, still going to church. And with this nut, had this early on sense of vocation in the church to the ordination, more in the Episcopal Church, and just pushed it back, and worked for Delta, and then left and worked for an advertising agency. And then it just got to be where I really felt a strong sense. So in my mid-30s, I went to seminary and was ordained at 40, and worked in churches in Austin, where I went to seminary, and then back in the Atlanta area, and then Seattle for 8 years. And when I was in Seattle is when I saw an ad in Christian Century for this study at Johns Hopkins and NYU. So that was in 2015, I saw the ad. I was in the study in 2016. And then that next summer, really because of my psychedelic experience, I had such clarity. We moved to Savannah for another church position here in Savannah. So that.
My mother, my mom and dad are still alive. They're 80. My mom's 89. My dad's 90. And my mother was born and raised in Savannah.
Oh, she was.
My dad's from Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
He was stationed in the Coast Guard in Savannah, and that's how he met my mom. They were married at Bull Street Baptist Church.
Oh yeah, I know it.
And I was conceived in Savannah, but Dad got out of the Coast Guard in the 50s, and he was a Yankee and couldn't get a good job in Savannah in the 50s. So
there weren't a lot of jobs in Savannah ever.
and so my mom and dad moved back to Wichita so Dad could get a job and raise a family. So I was born in Wichita, but
Okay. Oh yeah.
but I've
Wow.
gone back to my mother's hometown many, many times, and she used to go to Tybee Beach all the
Oh yeah.
time,
Oh
and
God. Yeah.
we've eaten at all the Paula Deen related places
Yeah.
down there, and
She folded her tent. She's out of here now.
but she was there for a long time.
Oh yeah, she was.
I've been going there a while, and then her brother had one too, or something, right?
Her
Or
sons, I think.
oh, her son. Okay,
Yeah.
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 Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
So
still have family here? Is there still family in
so
Savannah?
we still have family in Georgia and in Alabama
Okay.
on my mom's side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yep, all on my mom's side. So yeah, in fact, my mom and we still pop down there occasionally, and hang out
Well,
and
let me
stuff.
know. I'm here. I'm living in
Okay.
Ardsley Park. So let me
Yeah.
know.
Plus, a lot of my mother's side of the family were Episcopalians because of that as the colony,
Yeah, I
Georgia
mean, a lot of it.
colony
I mean, there's
was
Episcopal Church every
was.
4 blocks.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So, tell us about this 2016 study at Johns Hopkins where they collected. What were they trying to do, and what was your experience?
Well,
Because
so I
I'm
mean,
so fascinated by this.
yeah. Well, it was I knew a little bit, but not a lot, and uh, Hopkins picked up. There was tons of research in the 40s and 50s and 60s around mental health and psychedelics. We knew in the 50s that depression could be treated with LSD. It was not common, but it was happening. It was legal. It was happening. And
Was that when was the Timothy Lear
that was 50s and 60s.
50s and 60s? And that
Yeah,
was
so
Harvard was a center of some of that,
Harvard was
right?
the center of it, but it was going on all over the country, and there was religious use, there was therapeutic use. It was, again, this is kind of that history that gets buried that we're uncomfortable with, so we just forget it. But so anyway, so that research is going on in the 50s and 60s. Richard Nixon, the war on drugs, politicized everything. It just stopped in 72, and they put these all on Schedule 1. And then Hopkins,
Marijuana,
including marijuana,
including marijuana, yeah.
which again we knew in the 50s that all of these had medical value. We knew
Right.
cannabis did, and it was a political thing, but a bad political thing, but with a lot of racism in it too.
Yes.
So anyway, fast forward, Hopkins picks
Douglas
up the research.
Brinkley's book is pretty
Yeah.
good on that history of at least. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's. I mean, it needs to be out there because
Mhm.
we're still living in this paradigm of the war on drugs for a lot of people that, that they're all bad. And that's where I was. I'd been around psychedelics. I'd never done them. Mushrooms I was more open to. I thought LSD would fry your brain. And so, I had those same cultural messages, but I saw an ad in Christian. So Hopkins picked the research back up in 2000. Johns Hopkins did. Picked back up where they'd left off in the 60s and 70s, and doing a lot of research with depression, anxiety, addiction, fear of dying, trauma. And so they were discovering that they were getting the best results with the mental health treatment were having spiritual and religious experiences. So let me back up real quick. In 1962, there was a study it was a Harvard study, but it was at Boston University. It was called the Good Friday Experiment. And 1962, Marsh Chapel at Boston University. Howard Thurman was the dean of the chapel and preaching. And it was a doctoral project for somebody at Harvard Medical School who was also doing a theology degree. They brought in 20 seminarians, dosed them with psilocybin, half with psilocybin, half with something else, with a placebo. In the lower chapel, Howard Thurman's preaching for 3 hours, doing the 3-hour Good Friday service upstairs. They're downstairs. That was I didn't know about that. I didn't know Howard Thurman was involved. Howard Thurman invited them to be there. For people that don't know who Howard Thurman is, he was Martin Luther King's spiritual director, very quiet, spiritual voice of the civil rights movement, very important person.
His book, Jesus and the
Disinherited.
Disinherited is one of my favorites.
Oh my God. And this book on meditation. I was reading his book on meditation, his book of meditations when I came across the Good Friday Experiment. So that's an important, again, when we think that this is not a Christian conversation, it actually is. Mm-hmm. Not just because of Howard Thurman, but other people. So anyway, Hopkins picked up the research, and Bill Richards and a couple other people wanted to redo the Good Friday Experiment with better science and not just Christians. So they put out a call for religious professionals who were psychedelically naive. I saw it in Christian Century. I thought, my God, I won't get in because everybody's going to want to do this. But they didn't, it turns out. And I got in, and they did a extensive mental health screen, physical screening. We were not in a mental health study, but they were using that protocol with us to see how we responded. I think 30 of us
went through this.
Yeah. What's that?
How many people?
30.
30. And were they all clergy?
Yeah, all clergy of various traditions.
Isn't that wild?
I mean, one or two Buddhists, they don't have the monks, and then a Muslim chaplain, a woman, and then 4 rabbis, and the rest of us were Christian clergy of various denominations.
It's like a joke.
I know it is. And I'm close to a lot of people, but there's a Jewish and a Muslim and a Christian organization. 3 of us are very close and try to work together on stuff.
Interesting.
In fact, that's how, in some ways, that joke gets used in the way the story's getting told from the study. It's like your priest on drugs, a rabbi, Muslim leader, and a priest walk into a study, that kind of stuff. But so anyway, it took forever to finish it. This was before Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. So it was not in the public consciousness as much as it is now. And they had a hard time filling it. They couldn't find rabbis who were psychedelically naive, honestly. The Jewish community doesn't have the baggage we have about it. And it was hard to find a Muslim. And it was kind of hard to find Christians that were willing to do it. But they found us, and we did it. It took a long time to finish it, long time to publish it. And it got published in May. Michael Pollan wrote a big article in the New Yorker about several of us. And since then, we've been doing a lot of podcasts and things. So it's out there. It's not hard to find. And I can send you the link.
Michael Pollan's, that Netflix series he did on How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah. So those are all the people that I worked with were in that. So I had no idea in some ways, what I was walking into, that it was the best researchers in psychedelics in the world, and I was getting to work with them. And they were the kindest, most welcoming people. They were so interested in what we thought and what we were doing, and just amazing.
Have you ever heard of Tina Shermer Sellers? Okay. No. She wrote a book called God, Sex, and the Conservative Church. And she's a PhD in sex therapy and family therapy. And she anyway, I've had her on a couple of times talking about, purity culture and sex and all that kind of stuff. She's great, but she's also in some kind of study going on right now with psychedelics. And I was curious if you'd run across her.
No, but anyway. I'll go back through look at your podcast. I mean, I've looked at them. I'll go back.
Tina Shermer Sellers. She also did a manual for called Shameless Parenting on how to raise your kids in a sex positive thing. But she's gotten really interested in this whole area. And I know she's with some pretty high quality science, double placebo, blind studies, all that stuff.
Feel free to connect us. I'd be fascinated to know.
Yeah. So what was you did this thing, and you actually had a pretty powerful encounter.
Too,
right?
So the protocol
in the study,
in the study. Oh God, yeah. I mean, you don't have to be in a church to have a spiritual experience. In fact, maybe it's better not to be in a church. But yeah, I mean, part of it was the way they really did a beautiful job of lowering our anxiety, making us feel comfortable. There were multiple Zoom conversations before, and then they were just so welcoming and so concerned that we felt comfortable without just get you as comfortable as you can be so that you can have the experience you need to have or want to have that's available. So, I mean, it was basically a hospital room that had been turned into a living room, and with sofas and bookshelves and books and art on the wall, and showed up at 9:00 on a Tuesday morning and sat and talked to the 2 guides and sat in there and talked for a while. And then they gave me had a prescription for a Schedule I drug from the Hopkins pharmacy, psilocybin, a medium high dose, and took it and said a prayer and put my eye shades on and put the headsets on and had a big adventure, and then, which I can talk about. And then a
Hey,
month later, came
spirituality
back and
adventures.
but yeah, exactly. Had a big spiritual adventure. And, and then a month later went back. The protocols of 2 sessions a month apart, a little bit higher dose, and had a very equally profound with some connection and overlay and some very different. So, but very rooted in, I think, certainly in Christian spirituality, and also in my role as an ordained person. And sort of everything I brought to the table is like we all bring we bring our life to any experience we have. And I brought my life to it and saw myself reconnected to my body, reconnected to the wisdom of my body, and reconnected to the movement of the Holy Spirit in my body.
So since I'm a vineyard guy, former vineyard guy, right?
It's still there.
I'm,
Still there.
I was into prayer language and all those kind of things, right? Tell us
Well, that was
tell
my,
me what some of your, yeah, right. Tell
Epiphany, and speaking in tongues, that's not exactly
right.
what we do. Although I grew up in Kentucky, so I was very aware of it. And
Yeah.
I was always curious. I never doubted, I never really doubted people having those gifts. I was just a little too disordered for the Episcopal Church,
right?
But I was open to it, and that was also, the 70s. That was happening everywhere, so
yeah,
I was aware of it and open to it.
There were several charismatic Episcopalian priests.
Oh God, yeah, Seattle had that was a big thing in Seattle.
Yep.
And healing, and so that was certainly aware of all that and not dismissive of it. But that was my. Let me tell you a little. I don't want to go too far into it.
No, I'd love to hear just how you would have described it. Yeah,
that's an important part of this. So, so about an hour in, I'm I'm seeing, sort of colors, and it's beautiful, but I'm really uncomfortable, and I'm just so fidgety, and I just can't quite get comfortable. And then I start feeling this really powerful electric current coming from the base of my spine. And let me back up. So sorry about that. A year before I was in the study, I went to a 10-day meditation retreat, a Vipassana meditation retreat. And I haven't told the story for a while, so I'm sorry.
Hey, so let me hang on this one.
Okay.
So I just completed a 2-year training with Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield.
You did?
On mindful meditation, and they're from the Vipassana Buddhist tradition.
Yeah, amazing.
And I did a 6-day retreat like this with the Vipassanas. I did 6 days, but go. You're 10 days. So I'm curious because I did 6 days.
So this was a year before I was in the study.
So and you did it.
And I went it was the end of my sabbatical, and it was just, it's funny. I went to Wild Goose at the beginning of it, and this was in 2014. I was 50 years old, and so anyway, at the very end of it, I went to this 10-day Vipassana retreat. You sign that you won't leave because it's pretty, as you know, pretty intense and can be difficult. And the first couple of days, thank God I signed that, because I probably would have just snuck out to the parking lot and left, because it was just so hard and to stay focused. But so on day 4 or 5, I'm in the meditation hall. I feel this spirally energetic thing in my left thigh. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what that is, but that's amazing. And it just felt like it came out of nowhere. And that sounds like, so what? But it's very poignant for me. And it kept me there for the rest of the 10 days and it allowed me to go deeper in meditation practice. So, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then, so here I am a year later, a little over a year later, I'm at Hopkins. I feel that same, this is weird. I'd forgotten about it. In the same place, the same sensation after an hour and a half into that session. And I thought to myself, I remember the meditation retreat, 4 or 5 days. I had that same experience. I thought, an hour and a half into this, and I'm having this experience. So in my mind, I said, this is real. So I gave myself over to it. And then as soon as I did, this electrical current started in my base of my spine, and it was strong, and I could feel it coming up, and it got stuck right here. And I got fidgety and
That's
nervous.
your throat. Everybody who's
My
watching
throat.
you, yeah, you got
And
stuck
so
in your throat.
I thought my Adam's apple was going to explode. I really did. I remember thinking this is going to get out and it's going to come out of my ears or out of my Adam's apple, because again, I was using psilocybin and I had a big high dose of it. So I wasn't thinking totally logically. At that point, my guides realized I was struggling, and one of them put his hand on my shoulder. And as soon as he did that, that electrical current went up 1,000%. I mean, it was like something like the current went up, like somebody goosed it. And as soon as that did, it blew past this out the top of my head, and I started praying or making sounds or a prayer language. In my mind, I was speaking in tongues. It just like, oh, I thought that's what I'm doing. And I had no experience of that.
Right.
Really. And so
it wasn't like you were pre-prepped for it or anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was the last thing I thought. Yeah. I just thought I didn't know what, I had no expectations. So, and that went on for a long time. And there was a lot of other things that happened, but my biggest takeaway from that was, first of all, the throat chakra, which I knew very little about the chakra system. Mm-hmm. Now I'm a little more aware of it. Matthew Fox, the priest, wrote a book that has about the chakras, and he ties the 7 chakras to the 7 deadly sins and to the 7 sacraments of the church. And 2 years after I was in that study, I read that book. A friend recommended it. A Pentecostal friend of mine recommended it. And in that book, he ties the throat chakra to the sacrament of ordination, which is really to say the leadership in a spiritual community. And what I realized as a preacher and as a teacher, I was blocked. This was 2015, and I was still felt constrained about what I could say about the state of the world and politics, and I just felt like I couldn't say what I needed to say. My throat chakra was blocked, and it became unblocked.
Interesting.
In a dramatic fashion. So that was a big takeaway of this idea of the chakra system and the energy, that Kundalini awakening, which is something I'd never heard before, and then this idea of the Holy Spirit living and moving in my body. The body's a temple of the Holy Spirit, which is used to keep people from drinking and smoking. I think that's a misreading of that. It's a reminder that we are vessels of the movement of the Spirit. And so that was a huge epiphany for me in a way. And I'd gotten so far into my head as a religious leader trying to grow the church or keep the church moving, that I'd lost my own spiritual grounding in a way, and the spirituality of my body. And I didn't know, I never had a lot of hangups about sex, really, but just the eros and the power. I mean, it's dangerous. Eros is dangerous, but it's also a powerful spiritual force. And the church has botched that a little bit, yeah. But
botched that like since Augustine a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Paul didn't help.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. So and it's dangerous. I mean, I would say even psychedelics. I mean, religion is dangerous in a good way. If it's free, the spirit is dangerous. But we need tools and community to help us navigate and discern. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much of this that so much of Christianity's been kind of neutered and diluted, and because of fear. I mean, the Spirit, I think about the Episcopal Church and most mainline denominations, the Holy Spirit's not talked about very much. And if it is, it's a bird. And I think the more Pentecostal traditions understand the power of that.
Fire.
Yeah, fire. Exactly.
Tons of
fire. Roaring wind.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was my first experience.
Wow.
The second experience, and it was dramatic. In fact, the whole team came in to talk to me after I think word got out. I didn't move. I mean, I was very dramatic. It felt very sexual. It felt very erotic. It was erotic without sex. My whole body was vibrating, and it felt like that erotic energy that was contained. There was no danger of anything, and everybody boundaries were intact and all that. But I still haven't totally processed that part of it. That was a very important. And then so second session, my guides remembered. I mean, I was like, is that going to happen again? And it wasn't. I got to go to the bathroom, and I made a joke like, I guess I'm not going to get the hour and a half erotic adventure. And I sat back down after going to the bathroom, because it's important to say that with psilocybin, even a high dose, it's not like you're drunk or stoned. You wouldn't drive a car. You're not overly conversant, but you can get up and go to the bathroom. You're not flat out. And so I got in the bathroom, came back, and then that energy started again. And I realized that I couldn't get comfortable, and I was flopping around on the sofa. And I think at one point, one of my guides went to my feet and had me press against him, like Lamaze sort of thing, and breathing. And then I was rocking at one point. I thought, I'm praying like Jewish people pray.
Daveling.
And then I got on my stomach, and this is the connection to the church. And I got on my stomach on this sofa, and I was my head was flat to the sofa. And I thought, this is like how Muslims pray, with their forehead on the ground. And then I remember my ordination to the priesthood. And in the Episcopal Church, the ordination, you can either kneel in front of the altar in front of the bishop, or you can prostrate. And I did not feel comfortable doing that. I decided to kneel. And so it's a sign of submission, and I guess I wasn't quite ready to submit. And so I knelt. And in that moment, in that all that was going on, I thought, this is the expansion of my ordination at the feet of the universe. And I don't know what that meant. I'm still not exactly sure what that meant, but that's what I thought. And it felt directly connected to ordination, which is why that earlier experience in my throat chakra was important too. So somebody else's Christian experience would come from their own experience of Christianity, or whatever. But that was the material I was working with, and that's what emerged. Like in our dreams, these things come up, and they're important to examine and play with and deal with. And I mean, those two experiences, if I'd never had another psychedelic experience, that would have been plenty of material to work with forever.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So interesting.
Yeah. Thanks. So and there were experiences of family things and connection to friends. And I brought my whole life to it, to those experiences. And those first two were profoundly life-changing.
That's so interesting.
Deepening. And I was a better preacher and a better priest and a better pastor. I really understood the power of touch in a way that I'd never really appreciated, that we're transferring energy, which is not a way I would have talked or thought. And when my guide touched me like that, it unleashed some energy in me. It freed me up. I think he wouldn't say this at all, but he's a scientist. But I think his touch to ground me really freed me. And when I used to pray with people in the hospital or at the altar rail, and they'd ask me to pray, I would lay my hands on their crown chakra. Now is what I would say. And these practices, I think, that we have are vestiges of an earlier wisdom. We knew that something happened here, and it's important when we lay hands on people. It's important to know that there's something happening just beyond just the physical touch. That there's a spiritual connection. So anyway,
I'm interviewing a gal from my church right after you today, who is a Reiki master.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about some of that. Of course, me being from the vineyard, I wouldn't call myself a Pentecostal, but more of I was kind of, vineyard called ourselves the radical middle, unite the evangelical and Pentecostal world. But we I've laid hands on people all over the world, and prayed for tens of thousands of people with laying on of hands or anointing with oil.
Yeah, exactly. And I I would say I did it. I hate to say this, but it was sort of perfunctory to me before.
Yeah.
I mean, not totally. I thought, well, it's good to touch people, and yes, but it's much. If we really understood the power of these things that we do, I think we would.
Well, I mean, even the science. I just interviewed a gal that finished her doctorate in the intersection of spirituality and neurobiology, and the energy that a human body puts out. It extends about 15 feet from outside our own human body. So there's more and more research happening. You know, she talks about the three brains with the cumulative neurons in the brain and the heart and in the gut. And this is energy. And obviously when we touch and connect and things like that, there is something going on there. And, you know, in the vineyard, we had this 5-step model where we would pray, lay hands, and then interview people. And we were trained to observe what they were feeling, what we were feeling, heat, tingling, these kinds of bodily sensations when we prayed for people, and to check in with them and what they're feeling. And so it's so fascinating to me.
See, I mean,
when you don't box it into some theology, but let it move out into the realm of the universe and the energy of the universe and the healing of, I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I would say, I mean, aside from the vineyard and a few other places in Western Christianity, I'll certainly say this about the Episcopal Church. It became overly rational. And I don't want to throw out any, but if you put everything in a box of just rationality and aren't open to things, even this, even whatever, it's like, we don't need to be so closed down. And if scripture is any guide, which I think it is, then we know that the world is full of energy, and whatever we call those entities, it's energy that's happening all around us. And that's our power. And I've had profound experience with Reiki masters and Reiki. Yeah. So the science is less interesting to me, although I think it's good for us to know it, but good old fashioned testimonial is just as important. And the experience I've had with a really good Reiki master have been incredible.
Very interesting. So, thanks for sharing all that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a lot. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So this led you to found Ligare in 2021. So you did these studies in 2016. So tell us a little bit about Ligare. Tell people how they can check out your website and different things like that. And then after you talk about that, I've got a couple other questions, that I'm curious.
So that study, I was in that study in 2016. I ended up moving to Savannah that next summer because I had such I came out of that. One of the things that people say about psilocybin is such, for a few weeks or a month, you have real clarity. I was so clear about who I was, what I was called to do. And out of the blue, this job in Savannah came to my attention. And the timing was kind of terrible. My son was about to be a senior in high school. I wouldn't have moved if he wasn't ready, and he was. And my then wife was ready, so we moved. And I came to Savannah with the full intention of doing a full thing here. And but I knew it was going to change. I knew that experience was going to change my work, and I was just going to wait for the timing. So was I going to be trained as a facilitator? Did I want to get some spiritual direction training, knowing that I wanted to stay in the church and do this work in the church? So I came to Savannah, and it's halfway through that COVID happened, and the 2016 election, and it got really hard, and I could see my own depression creeping back in. I saw it, of course, in the wider culture. I went on a retreat in November of 2020, in the middle of COVID, and realized that there was no place within Christianity to have this discussion. The mental health crisis was extreme, and I knew what psychedelics could be, and I knew that there was no place for Christians to learn about this, and no place for the psychedelic community to learn about the parts of Christianity that can actually be helpful in this, which is the spirituality, the mysticism, the spiritual practices of Christianity, and the community, and the stories in Scripture, which, whether are psychedelic, even if they're not evoked by psychic. I would say the Book of Revelation would be one place to start. But if you
or
look
Ezekiel,
at or Ezekiel and
anyway.
Or the resurrection appearances of Jesus. I mean, there's just the burning bush. I mean, there's just so much that's non-ordinary in Scripture. I don't care if people were taking psychedelics; it doesn't matter. Those are non-ordinary states of consciousness that are in Scripture. So there's real resources. So anyway, I came back from that retreat, and I knew a few people and got some financial support to start a educational nonprofit. So in April of 21, I resigned that position and incorporated as a Georgia nonprofit in 2021, and off to the races, and started going to every psychedelic conference I could go to, doing online Zoom. It's still COVID, so doing online Zoom meetings, one-on-one meetings, sort of basic community organizing, and gathered a board and just continued to put out a newsletter. And after about 3.5 years of that, we realized we needed to kind of go deeper. So this past May, we started an online community where people join for a small amount of money, $150 a year, all the way down to zero. So we scholarship it. And we still do a lot of free things, but we also now have spiritual direction groups. We do breath work workshops. We do educational things in this online platform. But ligare.org is the website. Ligare is Latin. It's the root word of religion, and ligament means to bind or unite. Religare is really religion, so to rebind to God was how we would think about that in religious circles. And that's what we're doing. And the spiritual direction thing has been extremely successful. So groups of 5 or 6 people meet with the spiritual director once a month. Some have worked with psychedelics, some haven't, some want to. So it's just basically what they call in psychedelic circles integration groups, but through a Christian lens. And we have a group of maybe 15 scholars, PhDs, and teachers that are writing and teaching about psychedelics in Christian context. So we're sort of two foci. One is scholarship, the other is spiritual direction and pastoral care.
Wow.
We don't do retreats. We just support people that are discerning that or have had experiences and want to make meaning or make sense of it, or try to make sense of a kind of new epiphanies in their own religious life.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really taken on a life of its own. We were at Wild Goose this year. We've been there 4 years, but this year we had a booth and a well-staffed group of about 12 people that staffed the booth, and there were 8 or 9 psychedelic presentations at Wild Goose. We were at Greenbelt for the last 2 years, which is in England. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Group of people that sort of took responsibility and staffed the booth. We talked to 300 people at Greenbelt. Lots of clergy, lots of interested people who couldn't believe that psychedelics were there as part of the conversation. And people have had psychedelic experiences and are Christian. They just haven't necessarily had the opportunity to put those together. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Two questions I have in terms of one is, where's the research, right? What kind of research is actually going on? Where is it going on with psychedelics, like scientific research stuff? And then I've also heard about people who go through training to be plant therapists, basically. I hear this term quite a bit. Yeah. I actually interviewed one plant therapist here in Kansas City a couple of years ago, Natasha Keisler. But I'm curious what kind of training is out there? What's the best stuff going on in terms of research and therapies?
Well, there's 3 states where psychedelics or psilocybin is legal. Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico is about to come online. New Mexico they're still developing their protocols, but so it's accessible legally in 3 states. Jamaica, the Netherlands, a lot of people go to Mexico. And there's a lot of underground stuff, there's good work happening in the underground, but people need to make sure that they're working with trustworthy people if they do that. But it's available and in those ways. And then the training, this California Institute of Integral Studies, CIIS.edu, had the first kind of recognized training for therapists, medical doctors, and chaplains. And that's ongoing. There's cohorts in Boston and San Francisco and online. So that's kind of the gold standard at this point for training, just because they were the first. And it's through an accredited institution of higher learning. UC Berkeley has a training program. An organization called Psychedelics Today has a training program. Emory University is doing a ton of research right now. Their model, and they've got clinical trials going on at Emory. Their model is a therapist, the client, the patient, a therapist, and a chaplain. So they're bringing in the spiritual and the religious, which I think is really where it needs to be. There's research going on all over the country. There's studies in Savannah. I'm sure there's studies in Kansas City. Is it clinicaltrials.gov, I think, is the place to go for those, for people that want to do clinical research. There's a ton of that going on. So I would really encourage people to look at that website to see what's happening in their own communities, especially if people are dealing with mental health issues. That's where that research is about. So, and that's the train. And there's other trainings which can be easily found online, but CIIS, UC Berkeley, Psychedelics Today. And there's a few others. I'm just not thinking. We need a lot of therapists trained. We need a lot of chaplains trained. We need people just to be aware of this because of the research is showing pretty profound results for untreatable depression, treatment-resistant depression, because antidepressants don't work for a lot of people. And if they do work, it sort of has a lot of side effects. Side effects from psilocybin are minimal. The risk profile for psilocybin is almost nil. So psilocybin's down here, alcohol's up here, if you look at a chart of risk profile. So, and we don't seem to have a problem with alcohol.
I highly recommend don't combine Xanax and alcohol, which is what I did for my anxiety, insomnia, sleep issues.
Yeah.
Which got me into trouble. And then,
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely a curious, I haven't done any of this yet, but because of
you did it. You said you already
yeah, when I was a teenager, and I can remember the things I saw and stuff even from then, which it wasn't a negative thing, but it was pretty, it was like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, with colors and images merging and dissolving and reemerging. And it was really interesting. But yeah, I can remember those things.
I think a good podcast for the intersection of Christianity and psychedelics is Christian psychedelics, a guy in Texarkana, and he interviews a lot, and he came to it as a middle-aged guy, and he grew up Baptist in Texarkana, now goes to the Episcopal Church. But so the Christianity and psychedelic conversation is happening. We're not the only people doing it. We're just trying to corral it and promote it and get people curious and keep people safe. That's one of the
for sure. And you did have some kickback on this stuff. So back, I guess, you had somebody that interned with you for a little bit, got a bit bent out of shape, and then
he felt like we needed to be. There was a series of articles a couple of years ago around abuse in the clinical psych and therapeutic settings. The therapist that was basically sleeping with her clients, and it was a terrible scandal, and that very upset him, and it upset a lot of people. And then he became disenchanted with. He was working for me at the intersection of psychedelics and Christianity. He was a student at Harvard Divinity School and was doing great work, and then got disenchanted with that, and then felt like I was not taking the harm stuff seriously enough, and then just it felt personal. I mean, he would say it wasn't, but it felt personal. And then he filed charges against me in the Episcopal Church for conduct unbecoming a member of the clergy, saying that I was encouraging people to use illegal drugs. And there was a big investigation, and that happened over the course of about 9 months. And most of his charges were dismissed, but the committee did determine that I was using my role as a priest in the Episcopal Church to encourage people to use illegal drugs, which I did not see it that way, obviously, but that's what they determined. And I was given a choice of either resigning my work at Ligare or resigning my role as a priest in the Episcopal Church. And I stuck with my ministry, which is Ligare. And so I was deposed, which is a very legalistic sounding thing and I can apply to come back in if I stop this work, or if the church changes. And this is the Diocese of Georgia. It's not the whole Episcopal Church.
Right.
So, it was unfortunate and it made me sad. And I felt like I know this is an important work for the church to be involved with, because it's about healing and spirituality, and we'll come around.
I can't even tell you how many, I just had a guy visit my church just a month ago. And, I'm pastoring a small church now. So we had coffee, and he was an atheist, and he had started getting into some therapy models, and ended up doing a mushroom thing, and ended up believing in God again. I mean, he kind of started out halfway in a kid, but then had gone 20 years. He was like in his mid to late 30s. And he's back in church, because of a mushroom trip. And that's just one example.
Oh my God.
That's one example in the last month. And I'm like, and I'm just like, wow, that's just so fascinating.
Yeah, because
of course, then I think back to Lonnie Frisbee and my whole tradition.
That's my frustration. That's my frustration with the Diocese of Georgia, and my frustration with clergy who just. There are a lot of people are interested, and a lot of people just, and that's why it's like people actually need to talk about this. They'd like to talk about it in a Christian context. And if you're not curious and judgmental and shutting it down, you're missing an opportunity to be of service to somebody. So bless you for that. And they say, I think this is true, but it's kind of a joke, is the only people that should be afraid of psychedelics are atheists. And, and that's sort of tongue in cheek, but there's an example of that.
Interesting.
And again, these are powerful. So it's not to be done casually, or, people do what they do, but the best opportunity is in a safe setting where you feel cared for, and there's somebody there that's not working, they're not using, so that you can be safe. There's ways to do this to keep people safe.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this. We got just a couple more minutes, but when you get into some of these therapy plant models, so I've been told that you can do similar type therapies with certain strains of marijuana. Mm-hmm. I've also heard about these plants in South America, the ayahuasca stuff.
Those are very
Then,
powerful.
of course, you got peyote's from a mushroom, though, right?
No, it's cacti. It's cactus.
Oh, it's cacti.
So there's two basic. Peyote's the cactus, of course, it grows on the Texas-Mexico border. There's another one called San Pedro, which grows initially in Peru. But it's got mescaline. Mescaline is the active ingredient in the cactus.
And then what's in the ayahuasca? That's a plant.
It's DMT, which is produced in our brain. But it's also, there's two plants in the jungle that combine, that are cooked together. One plant has the DMT, but your stomach acids would prevent it from becoming psychoactive. This is what's so amazing. And then this other plant gets cooked with it that allows it to actually get into your stomach and then move into your body. That's jumping in the deep end. There's also a toad venom from the Sonoran Desert that has 5-MeO-DMT.
Yeah.
There's other plants, but psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, which is from the Peruvian jungle,
Mm-hmm.
mescaline, the peyote cacti, and the San Pedro, and then there's a plant from East Africa called iboga, which that's a very powerful one.
They chew on that, called cat or something like that.
That's a different. That's from over there. Cats from over there.
Okay.
Yeah, cats from over there too.
Yeah.
But what they're finding with ibogaine, and Texas government just approved $50 million for this research. for opioid addiction and for PTSD for veterans. Ibogaine you have to be monitored. Your heart has to be monitored with that. But there's clinics in Mexico that are working with that. So
it's so fascinating to me. And then I was listening to a podcast and I've totally forgot who did it, but a guy had gone back and done archaeological research on ritual wine ceremonies, and they've been able to take like the clay and analyze what the ingredients that were mixed in with the wine in a lot of different ritual ceremonies. Some people even think the Pauline passage about taking the Lord's Supper in an inappropriate way. There's so much like archaeological research in terms of like many ancient ritual spiritual traditions were combining like ritual wine with ritual plants, kind of stuff.
I would say that was happening in I really do think it was happening in early Christian communities. And so Christianity took a long time to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things going on in those first few centuries that were experimental, and then the church had to crack down on everything. I think I would just one point I like to make about when we talk about Christianity and psychedelics is the institutional church, due to the colonial patterns of the church, did a lot of damage to indigenous religious practice. And these, the Spanish conquerors discovered people working with these plants in South America, Mexico, and did terrible cultural damage. And those communities went underground. Maria Sabina was a curandera in Oaxaca, and she was a Roman Catholic woman in the 50s working with mushrooms, and her bishop knew about it. And so, that's where Gordon Wasson went there in the 50s and discovered this whole religious practice. He was a practicing Christian and said that it was like Pentecost. His father was an Episcopal priest. He was down there, an amateur mycologist, and said it was very Pentecostal. So, and there's an arrogance in institutional religion, institutional Christianity, that acts like God can't be moving anywhere else but in the institutional church. Right. And that's wrong. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
It's done a lot of damage. And thank God these communities have been willing to hold these practices and being willing to, now teach us about it. And I think that's part of the work the church needs to do is atone for not just that part of colonialism, but all of it. But we did real damage to existing religious communities, religious practice.
Yeah.
And it sort of picked and chose what we wanted to keep.
Right.
And so anyway.
Yes. Yeah. I think
I am a practicing Christian, and I think the Christian tradition has much good to offer the world.
Yeah.
And much things that we need to let go of.
Yeah.
And that cultural arrogance is one of them. So,
yeah. Sure.
Misreading of John. Misreading him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I'm still a pastor.
Yeah, I would be too.
I took a break. I had a big personal meltdown that became very public because the church I'd founded had grown to a mega church. And so I wound up, having a lot of publicity around my most embarrassing moment in life, and took a big break, which I needed. And
yeah, you needed it.
And Richard Rohr's book, Falling Upward, really kind of got my faith off the ventilator. And then, I got into recovery and started reading everything Richard footnoted, and that led me to Matthew Fox. And that original Blessing book of his.
Yeah, that's
I loved. That's one of my top 10 books of all time now.
Yeah,
is that original Blessing by Matthew Fox, and that's what took me to my whole new space now. Yeah, I got exposed to mindful meditation through DBT therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and I thought
you've done some really hard, deep work. It sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, but no, and I just continue to try to be an advocate for all healing modalities that are good for you. Yeah. And
the church is, that's where I do connect the psychedelic work to healing, both emotional healing and spiritual healing. But so I say the church is back to Jesus and before that, but with Jesus as the healing ministry of Jesus, then the church moved into building hospitals and training doctors and nurses. And then if we don't care about, if the church doesn't care about healing, then what the hell are we doing?
Right.
So
you can look at all the negative impacts of colonial Christianity around the world, but then right alongside that, you've got the hospitals and the medical doctors and hospitals, and all the things that are the good things about Jesus that manifested around the world. But then
if we didn't have to convert people at the edge of a sword, if we converted people and which it was happening by being present to people. And the best of the missionary work was going to a culture and learning from the culture, which did happen.
And and you grow as much as anybody else.
Yes, but to go there with the intent of converting people is just wrongheaded and backfires and does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So,
well, Hunt,
the church is still evolving. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. Thanks for the work that you're doing. Ligare, Ligare.org, and that'll get you to a Christian psychedelic society. And I was fascinated by all the things that you're doing through Ligare, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to know that you had a parishioner come in and have coffee and was willing. That shows you're open. You perceived you as open if he was willing to talk about an illegal thing he'd done in the context of his religious life.
I don't know. I think he went out of town and did it somewhere. I mean, you can do those things in legal settings now, right? In certain places. Yeah, I think he went out of town somewhere. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, I was so grateful that he opened up about that, and I was able to share with him all of my journey too. So, yeah.
Well, stay in touch and let me know what I'm happy to.
Yeah. Hey, there's a whisper right now about 90% that Theology Beer Camp next year is going to be in Kansas City.
Oh, well,
in October. So you should.
Come.
Yeah.
October?
In October. They do it every year in October. So I'm kind of excited about that.
I have a good friend in Topeka. I actually know a couple people in Kansas City too, but I have a good friend, the Episcopal priest in Topeka. That's why last time I was in Kansas City flew in there and then spent some time and then went to Topeka. So good people out there.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Spirituality Adventure. Thank you, Reverend Hunt Priest, for all.
You got to drop the Reverend these days, but that's fine.
For all of the insights that you've given. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for your curiosity.
Take care. Blessings.
Welcome. You too. Thanks.
All right.
Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.